Hello my fellow nerds, Calco here. And as you all know, I love Helluva Boss and Hazbin Hotel, and I'm not going to stop watching it anytime soon, and I am highly anticipating the Hazbin Hotel release next year. Vivian puts a lot of love and detail into her work, and I deeply admire her, and I believe her success is well deserved. I love the series so much, and it remains one of my favorite series. However, the series, of course, is not perfect, and there are a few things in this series that kind of irk me. Two big things, actually, and I'm going to go over that in this video. Something always felt off to me while watching Helluva Boss, more specifically, the later seasons. And now I've finally figured out why. Helluva Boss has two glaring issues that I want to address. According to Vivzy, Hell has a hierarchy where imps are at the bottom, and beneath them are hellhounds. Blitzo starting his own business is seen as shocking and progressive, and yet, Crimson is a crime lord that can threaten princes of hell and runs a gang of hired demons working for him. Fizz is a major celebrity, dating a prince of hell and mingling with several other princes. A hellhound, the one race lower than imps, is in a relationship with the Princess of Gluttony herself, and low-class demons can get into a club run by the Prince of Hell and face no discrimination whatsoever. So everything that we hear here...
Not every ring is some fancy-ass city with some fancy-ass mansion that only fancy-ass royals get to live in. Some of us have hard lives to live.
Feels moot and lacks an impact. Stella freaking out over Stolas fucking an imp, while the kings of hell, which are more important than them, the hierarchy by the way, are doing the exact same thing, if not worse. Stolas' stigma when he visits Ozzy's is very big and gets a whole section of song. Meanwhile, no one says a thing about Bee and Vortex, which is a relationship that is far further on opposite sides of the hierarchy. Stryker commenting on Blitzo's business and saying that they're more evolved than other imps means nothing when you have people like Crimson, Wally Wackward, and Fizzarali making their own names and being uber successful. Stryker's comments on imps and blue bloods also contradicts that and gives us the impression that anyone can become anything if they just try hard enough. You know, pull yourself up by the bootstraps capitalism. If we compare this to a real-life caste system, you'll see a lot of the glaring issues. Take a look at the former caste system in India. The caste you were born into determined your job, social class, marriage, even your diet. Even though the system is supposedly abolished, people of lower classes still have been reported to be killed for just eating in front of higher classes. It determines your opportunities, your education, your profession, and it was nearly impossible to move castes or work in a profession outside of what you were designated. It follows you everywhere. Everything is stacked against you if you try to go to do something different. And moving between classes isn't as simple as just starting a business. It's incredibly hard. Those that challenge the system are often put in their place. And there's a lot of violence against those who try to speak out and do something different. Whereas Blitz faces pretty much no consequences for starting his own business. Neither does Fizz, Wally, or Crimson. If you don't want to portray this kind of stuff, that's fine, but then don't claim to have a caste system or classism in your world. But in my opinion, the caste system and classism should exist in Hell because it's Hell. Unfairness should be a significant factor. Hell shouldn't exactly be the most comfortable place to live in. Speaking of which, Hell is like heaven compared to Earth. And it seems like many demons are like saints compared to everyday humans. And then there's points in the series where things get even hypocritical. Like Moxie has reservations in episode 1 about killing a family, and even lectures Martha's family about being murderous cannibals. Meanwhile, Charlie was laughed at for asking the same murderous cannibals to reform. These two inhabit the same ring. To be fair, it is portrayed that Moxie is an outsider in his beliefs, and it is revealed that he has a sensitive spot for family values. But that doesn't change this.
Kids die for free!
Moxie had no problem killing this child in the pilot. Why does he have a problem in the very next episode? There's also kind of a lack of some Hellborn with bad moral conscience doing or condoning bad things and they're actually being good people. Like, there's still a standard of doing the right thing in a lot of things like relationships, families. I'm not going to complain too much about this aspect because making your characters likable and engaging while still making them terrible people is a very, very hard thing to do. Yeah, this part I don't have much of a problem with. But it's to the certain extent that I see it where it's an issue. And still, despite all that, there's still a huge chunk of the fandom that goes,
I'm tired of the it's hell excuse. There is no reason to be a shitty character.
Bitch, it is hell. This is the place where bad people who do bad things go to suffer for eternal punishment. So, where is the punishment? The ability to make a name and money for yourself if you work hard enough, having access to internet, water, electricity, a home, a smartphone, a TV, all these apps and their subscriptions, traveling easily within moments, and still having enough money left over to buy random horse stuff? That seems like heaven to me. So, Helluva Boss started off great and not having really either of these problems. And then the rest of the series rolled in and things turned way too sweet, but we should really give Vivzy credit where credit is due. She realized she used to have a problem with a lot of show don't tell, and in Helluva Boss, she fixed that really, really well. So I'm definitely going to commend her for that. And I'll go through a lot of the good examples that really show that, hey, this is hell, this is a horrible place to live in, and hierarchy exists. The Has-Been Hotel pilots and the first season of Helluva Boss did this very well, actually. Both of the pilots especially. The opening of Has-Been Hotel still gives me chills. The entire time, I truly felt like I was getting a glimpse of hell. You feel the sense of going to hell, the sinisterness, the stakes, the potential horrors you may witness. You get to see like the constant violence and drugs and chaos that's constantly going down there, and you see, wow, this is actually a really terrible place to live. The Helluva Boss pilot also does this very well. You see the rundown buildings, the horns' resemblance of Los Angeles traffic. Everyone has shitty behavior to some extent, kind of like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They're supposed to be terrible people, but they're still entertaining. Stolas' conversation in the first episode really established that the main role of demons is to make hell on Earth. Stolas is trying to kill a bunch of humans with global warming. Notice how this majorly changes later. There's a bit less of a hellish atmosphere because everyone has smartphones, everyone has technology, but it kind of makes sense if it's a successful business. But other hellhounds later having that exact same technology, yeah, probably not really fitting as much. The ending of the pilot is also a very good one because it's so gruesome and it's so messed up that it really sells you back into the idea that, hey, you're in hell. Moxie and Millie sing about murder. Blitzo calls Moxie retarded. There's a lot of portions where you can really see their effed up sense of humor, and you really get the feeling that, oh yeah, this is hell, these people are not good people, but they're entertaining to watch. So the pilots nailed it down, but what about the rest of Helluva Boss? Well, Season 1, Episode 1, you see that they're in a contaminated building, which is again another great show don't tell that this is a lower class, and this is what they could afford. Stella's behavior is how I would expect an inhabitant of hell to act, especially nobility. Neglectful, bratty, cruel. She seems more focused on the fact that Stolas fucked an imp rather than the fact that he cheated on her. In hell, cheating would probably be less of a big deal, but going against your class, oh, that'd be a big no-no. Verosika acting like she's better than Blitzo fits because she's in a higher tier. The whole fact that imp profits off of sin and murder is the big selling point. And always is the main saving grace of remembering that this is a story that takes place in hell. Combating the cherubs by showing the old man all the bad things in life in order to get him to commit die is a very impish thing to do. The glorification of violence, death, and toxic masculinity in the Wrathwing makes a lot of sense. Also, I'm not sure if you noticed this, but Millie's family automatically assumes IMP is poor, likely because it's an imp-run business. Moxie has to wait months to get into Ozzy's, and Stolas can just walk right in and get a table right at the front. The bouncer even bows to him. Ozzy started off fine. It set the precedent that love is seen as gross if it is not lust. That's a good touch. I like how the virtues and the things that are good are seen as intolerable or weak or unacceptable in a place like hell. As it should be. But this will be ruined later. Now for season 2. Paimon's great.
At a spot that's close to the front, but also far enough that I don't have to smell the poor.
It's how you would expect a noble to act. If Blitzo's family was from the Greed Ring in the end, everything would make a lot of sense because they seem very money-oriented. Also, notice how Blitzo doesn't worry about stealing being bad. He's worried about getting caught. Very different from Moxie, who has a whole moral value about killing children or innocent family. Blitzo doesn't have a moral value against stealing. He's concerned about consequences and what might happen to him. This is a huge difference, with the attitude that Blitz has being what you would expect to find in hell. Blitzo is addressed as filthy and just as imp.
Don't bow to that one. He bows to us, idiot.
In Season 2, Episode 2, the Hellhound Center is really, really good portrayal. It shows that Hellhounds aren't even considered people, they're considered pets. Remember that for later. How the Greed Ring is portrayed is very cool. It shows all the negative effects of uncontrolled greed, such as negative externalities, constant robbery and crime, people selling their loved ones out for money. The small detail of Blitzo mentioning that it takes forever to get an appointment at the health clinic, and the only hospital in hell being at the very bottom ring, is a very interesting choice, and I kind of like it. Facing racism in the waiting room is also an interesting touch. And it's interesting how Stryker has a flip phone. Again, showing very clearly a class difference. And then, of course, there's the nonchalant lack of care for things like heroin and the fact that demons peddle drugs in the human world. Again, that's what you would expect for jobs from people of hell. Now that sounds like pretty good world building, you may think. Now, what exactly do I have issue with? The problems kind of start in episode 1. I already talked about how Moxie, despite killing a child in the pilot, suddenly has a problem with it now, but this is more of an inconsistency. Lululand was a little interesting. Things we saw there is kind of expectant of an amusement park in hell, and I liked all the little details, but I kind of kept asking myself, why would the Goetia go to the Greed knockoff instead of Lucifer's original Lulu world? The only other inhabitants here were imps. Wouldn't the Goetia just rent out the entire park? Why would they go to the intentionally shitty amusement park? I understand a bit more because of Stolas' past with Blitzo, but you think there'd be some kind of social stigma or internalized stigma that would exist in the park? But this could be explained away by Stolas being used to the circus here and not having an internal classism radar. Moxie's moral lecture in Cherub was very, very off, but Blitzo sprays him with piss, so that's fine. Ozzy's is kind of where it really gets bad. So love is bad, but the entire club is couples only. Maybe they meant no singles, because there are tables where there are more than 2 people. So maybe there is a miswrite there. Another thing that kind of irked me is that I guess anyone can get into Ozzy's. Then again, I didn't see any hellhounds there, but the fact that imps could get in, like, I would understand because you need Moxie and Millie to go there and stuff. But a nice touch would have been, like, noble and higher classes at the front and, like, the imps in the back. Also, how does an imp afford 4 Fizzaroli robots? But Season 1, Episode 8 is where it all really goes downhill. Vortex dating B is the biggest thing. Asmodeus has to hide his relationship with Fizz, but this is openly A-okay with a much lower species that isn't even allowed into Ozzy's. B being okay with the lowest of the low might be because she created them, and maybe she hosts these parties because it provides something to keep her hellhound henchmen hooked on her and keep them working. But probably the biggest thing that makes me cringe is the whole Beelzebub being concerned for Blitzo and saying, oh, he's drinking too much. Just as Asmodeus is
the embodiment of lust.
You are the embodiment of gluttony. Also, how the hell do you lose to a tiny imp like Blitzo in a drinking challenge? Not only are you the sin of gluttony, but you have twice the strength of him. Also, bowing to Blitzo is a little off, since
Don't bow to that one. He bows to us, idiot.
Luna being able to afford things like human disguises, Starbucks. The business seems to be going good at IMP, with Blitzo talking about how he's got 15 clients waiting for heads to roll in episode 5. So the ad must have done something. But what about all the imps and hellhounds at Ozzy's, B's parties, and Lululand? So LA is not too much different from Hell, okay, makes sense. But I guess Hell at least has rehab centers. Also, Via doesn't even have a tinge of classism at all? Really? You mean to tell me that this person who grew up around Stella her whole life doesn't have an ounce of classism towards Luna? But Season 2, Episode 3 is where things really turn bad, with just Crimson's existence. Like, I understand Crimson possibly being part of the Mafia, but the head of the Mafia? Why would upper demons, who are more than twice the size of Crimson, work for him? How has no one caught him? How is there no one putting him down? The entire existence of Crimson just blows up the entire notion of classism existing in Hell. Or at the very least in the Greed Ring. Also, why is Crimson impressed with Blitzo's business, where he's from a ring where Blitzo's dad, Wally Wackford, and Fizzaroli, and himself have all made themselves successful despite being imps? Oh yeah, and apparently sexism and homophobia only exists for the bad guys and nowhere else. Vivziepop has canonically stated that LGBT people do not go to hell in this universe because they are LGBT. And often throughout the series, we've seen a lot of homophobes in hell. And yet, Sally Mae is accepted in a family that's full of toxic masculinity somehow. They shame Moxie for his lack of masculinity, but their daughter being trans is A-okay. I just find it a little strange. Maybe Sally Mae has other things that make her valued and redeemable to the family, like a high body count. Maybe that's how she got away with it. LGBT is seen everywhere and is accepted. Maybe this is just a demon thing and homophobia and transphobia are mostly existent amongst the sinners. But I would think that if they were in hell, shaming and a lack of acceptance would be more of the norm. Because if Vivziepop dictated that LGBT people existing in itself is not a sin, and she has seemed to imply that those who shame it are bad people, then shouldn't there be a lack of acceptance in a lot more places?
Fuck me in my little red hole!
How is his language considered offensive? You have human kids talking like this, but how are Hell's kids a lot less vulgar?
The Hellbees shot, you fucking really can't say that.
Also, why are all the palaces in the Pride Ring? don't they want all of their palaces to be away from the plebeians? How is the healthcare system so damn good in hell? How is Barbie not elbow deep in debts? Is the USA supposed to be worse than hell? In Season 2, Episode 6, I see the irony here, but the King of Lust being in a monogamous relationship feels very off. I appreciate that it's being called out, but it still feels weird. Same with Ozzy going, yay, consent. Like, dude, this is hell. This is where terrible people that commit sexual crimes are supposed to go. This kind of leads to another issue that I have. It's like the lust ring doesn't seem like hell. Instead, it feels like Phuket's red light district. Where's the actual sin? The greed ring is full of negative externalities and crime done for money. In Wrath, death and murder are like everyday things, and the strong are the most valued. In Pride, shitty behavior, throwing people under the bus to advance yourself, is the norm. In Lust, it's just a bunch of sex jokes. Asmodeus went from
Grab your groin or a bust. You better get your hair mussed. Pretend you don't see that crust. Hop till you jump to the dust.
prevent STD posters everywhere and ask for consent. I know things like sexual abuse and those kind of topics are very sensitive subjects, and I do not blame Helluva Boss for not wanting to bring that into the series. But there are other ways that you can make the lust ring feel like hell without having to do that. Besides having an enforced stigma against monogamy and love, maybe subtle things like the hospital having an entire wing dedicated to people sticking things where they're not supposed to, or a rampant STD outbreak. Because apparently syphilis is still a thing in hell. The same thing goes with the gluttony ring. Maybe have gluttony be full of drunks and drug addicts that go untreated. The lust ring started out fine in Ozzy's episode, but Asmodeus with his relationship with Fizz is so woobified to the point where he doesn't feel intimidating or threatening like he did in his debut. When Asmodeus first appeared, he was intimidating. I got chills down my spine first seeing his design. And hearing his song, it really gave me an idea of, okay, this is what lust is like. This is what the lust ring is about. This is what the sin is about. I appreciate that his hypocrisy is called out, but it still doesn't really feel right. If these two had an open relationship, then all of this goes away, and for the most part, I feel more intimidated by him again, like I should be. Also, the fact that this is one of the healthiest relationships in the series also feels very off, given that this is, again, the King of Lust that has established that love is something that is not to be tolerated in his kingdom. Same with Beelzebub. If she was maybe a bit bigger and her behavior was more persistent, like encouraging hazing and stuff and getting angry when people took a break, like I would not have a problem with the character. Because that's what the Princess of Gluttony is supposed to do. So, how did we get here? Well, the biggest thing is woobifying what is supposed to be terrible people. And I don't really blame Vivzy herself for this, I mostly blame the fandom. Because interacting with the fandom, I've heard too many times that, oh my gosh, it's hell, shouldn't be an excuse to be such a shitty person. I'm just like, yeah it is, it's hell. And because of that, we've seen a lot of changes within people. We see Stolas going from trying to cook humans on Earth with global warming to being a genuinely good person with morals. But for some reason, I don't seem to mind Stolas being like this because he's trying to be better than his father and he has motivation for his actions. Moxie, who is from the same ring as Millie is from, works for a company where kids die for free, but then has reservations about killing children just one episode after he dismembered another human child. And then when you have Asmodeus, the King of Lust, being in a healthy, monogamous relationship with one of the lowest species of hell and expressing the importance of consent and preventing STDs, when in the previous episode he was just saying,
Grab your groin or a bust. Pretend you don't see that crust.
and Beelzebub, the Queen of Gluttony, keeping someone from overindulging. You start to wonder if these demons are actually demons. People seem to forget that the 7 deadly sins are portrayed as evil for a reason. It's because giving into these sins leads to bad things. Lust is more than just being horny. It's about prioritizing sex over other things in your life. And it can cause things like infidelity, non-con, seeing individuals as objects, and STDs. Gluttony isn't just about partying and getting drunk and doing drugs. It can lead to overdose and death by consuming too much of something, because too much of anything is bad. So seeing Beelzebub stopping someone from drinking to excess, she becomes the virtue of temperance instead of the sin of gluttony. What's next? Are we gonna see Satan breaking up fights when they get too rough? No, he's going to be the one hosting them, calling for death matches, as one would expect from the embodiment of wrath. These are demons whose goal is trying to worsen the earth. They are not supposed to be good, wholesome people. And that's what a lot of the fandom forgets. I see that this is the original direction that Vivzy wanted to take, but I think the fandom influence is just a little too strong. But this is hell. Charlie is supposed to have an uphill battle when it comes to getting these people to be redeemed. When you have demons that are like, oh, I can't offend anyone, overconsumption bad, you lose something. The Hazbin Hotel pilot was so great because you really felt the struggle that Charlie had and everything she was up against. You can tell that pretty much everyone in that hotel deserves to be in hell. The demons were intimidating. The dangers of hell felt very real. The setting of hell actually felt dangerous and scary. Meanwhile, in Helluva Boss, it just feels like Earth, but with colorful, hornier people. This problem isn't as magnanimous of an issue than I originally thought, and it doesn't take away from the story and characters too much. I still love this series, and I'm not going to stop watching it, and for the most part, the writing is very good, and most importantly, it's incredibly engaging and constantly keeps you wanting more, and that's something I still have to applaud the team for. Also, this issue is still fixable, except for maybe Beelzebub, because that one was pretty bad. She'd need a lot of work. Everything with Ozzy can be fixed with an open relationship and showing the issues of the lust ring. An explanation for Crimson, like confirmed canon recognition that the casteism doesn't matter in Greed and only money does, would fix everything regarding him. Showing a lot more discrimination is another big thing. Like, not just verbal discrimination, like economic discrimination as well. And please stop making evil demons wholesome, good people, especially after establishing in the pilot that their job is literally to bring bad things to Earth. But overall, I'd say Helluva Boss still does a pretty decent job of framing hell. There's just a few very big and glaring things that kind of distract from that every now and then. But until then, keep on studying.